Project 11-4 goes over downloading source code and compiling it and installing it. This is not recommended. You should rather use a RPM package manager or Debian package management system and download pre-compiled software and install it. That way you can remove it and check versions and stuff much easier than downloading source code and compiling it yourself. Downloading the source code is mostly for the people that create the distributions so that they can compile and make the packages for their distribution. But sometimes you have to install drivers for hardware, and they have to be compiled from source because they're commercial drivers and not included in the kernel. So every time you update the kernel, you'd have to go back in and recompile the drivers and reinstall the software so that the piece of hardware would work. So let's go over compiling. We log in as sample user 1 into the graphical interface. And you can use the Firefox web browser and go to ourdesktop.org and try to find the archive location of old software and download the 1.8.2 version. Or you can use the wget command, which I prefer. It has options such as to continue the download if it was to fail. Our desktop is very small, so it's not really a feature we need with wget, but if you're downloading large files, wget has a -c option to continue the download if it happens to fail. So I'm going to go to the command line and change into the desktop folder using a capital D, and I will use wget and the path on the internet to get the file. So I get all that typed out. I'll hit enter. And it'll run through, find, and download the file. If you get an error, you probably mistyped something. I've done this several times, and one of my times I left the dot out between the 8 and 2, and of course it failed. So with that downloaded, let's leave that screen up and go to the command line. As step 3, we'll do Control-Alt-F2. We'll log in as root. I'm already logged in. We need to install some software. So the preferred way to install and remove software, like I said, is using a package manager system. Red Hat uses yum. You can also use apt-get. I'm going to use yum-y, so I don't have to answer yes at the end of the word install. So I'm telling the yum program to install the following software: libx11-devel, that's capital X, and then open SSL devel. I'll hit enter. It'll go out, find those 2 software packages, and install them. One thing that yum will do, it'll go out on the internet and download a list of new packages and software that is on the internet for installing. So it'll grab the latest software, and you notice it's installing more than just those 2 packages. Sometimes packages have updates to them, and if they have updates, then other software on the system needs to be updated to match the same level. So that's a great thing about the package management. It auto finds what you need when you're trying to install a program and make it work. So here I have the software installed. Installed these 2 applications at the top, and then the dependencies, it showed that these 2 files also needed these other software packages to be installed for them to work. So that's the great thing about package management. You don't have to try to install and figure out what's going on. We'll talk about that in the next video. So now we need to go back to the graphical interface. I know in the book it may describe for you to do everything as the root account if you're reading the chapter. However, for security reasons, you should not compile software as root, just in case the software being compiled has malicious code in it, or it compiles a piece of software and accidentally gives it root permissions where it shouldn't have root permissions. So always extract and compile software as a regular user. I'm going to clear my screen and type in ls. I see the file is there. We've already gone over the commands for tar and stuff for extracting it. So I notice this is a tar file. These are several files in it, and it's been gzipped. So I need to extract it through the tar -z to filter it through the gzip program, X for extract, and V is optional. It shows us what's going to be extracted. I'll just leave that out. You can put that in there to see what happens on your screen. Then I'll put the file name. I'll just type V1 and hit tab so it'll complete it for me. I'll hit enter. I'll type ls, and I see that the directory rdesktop was created for me. I'll change into the directory, rd, and hit tab. I'll hit enter. Type in ls. It says -f. I'm just going to just type ls because it's color coded. I can see what is regular files, what is executables in green, and what are directories because they're blue. Now, normally for compiling software, you do ./configure, and then you type make, and then when the compile is done, you type make install. The step says notice the README, so I looked at the README when I downloaded this, and it says there's your typical .config make install. However, if you keep reading down here, for older versions, it says you have to run .bootstrap in order to generate the build infrastructure. So I'm going to hit Q, and I don't see a configure out here. So reading that README file let me know I needed to run this bootstrap program first. Now when I type ls, I see that I have a configure executable. If you try to run the configure, you'll get an error at the end saying you don't have the development tools for compiling smart card access. So you need to double dash and type in disable cred ssp space -- disable smart card. That's the two errors that you would get if you did not disable these two options, and it actually tells you what to type if you don't want to compile into support, or if you do need that support, you need to go download the tools for developing smart card. So we're not going to do that. We'll just disable those two features and hit enter. Now the compiler, actually no, it's going to check everything on the system and make sure that we have everything we need to make the software from source code. So once that's done, no errors, I'll type in make. So make the software, read all the programmer's text and convert it into the zeros and ones the processor can understand. Once that is done, no errors, I'll type in make space install. Excuse me, I need to switch over to the root account. So I'm going to type in su and hit enter. Notice I didn't put the minus. I don't want to change directories, so I just type in su. Temporarily elevate my privileges to root. Put in the root password. I'm still in the same directory because I didn't put the minus, and load up the entire root shell and everything, and go into the home folder. So I temporarily have root permissions, and I do make install, and this here will allow the root account to put the binaries where they need to go, in places that a regular user cannot put files. So the software is now installed. I can now type exit to get back to a regular user. I can go back a directory, cd ... and I'm going to remove rm-rf, recursively delete the directory, and f. Don't ask me any questions. If I don't put the F, I'll have to answer yes for every file. And I'll type rdesktop and hit tab, or rd and hit tab and hit enter. The folder is gone. Now if I type in which our desktop, it tells me where the program was put, and this matches when I did make install. If you look up here, when I did make install, it shows me that the R desktop was placed into user local bin R desktop, permissions and stuff were set on it. I said the bad part about this, there's no real easy way to remove the software. It put manual pages in and files all over the system. There's no database or record, you know, like Windows has add or remove programs that you can take programs away. If you can compile it from source and install it, there's nothing like that. So always use yum or apt-get whenever possible. And we can bring up the manual page, or I can show you that it works. You probably can't do this from your location. But we have a server that I know has remote desktop on it running that I can connect to from this particular location. So it boots up, gives me a Windows 2003 server login. I'm going to go ahead and close that down. I'm just showing you it does work. And remote desktop allows you to log into a Windows machine that's running remote desktop services. So you won't be able to reach that server off campus because it is firewalled off. So if you have a local computer that you have remote desktop running on, you might be able to replace this with the IP address or host name and be able to see it work. So I'm going to stop this video and we'll pick up 11.5 and 11.6 on the last video.